Hello, my name is Alysia Inosencio, and I'm a psychology student from Concord University. My research mentor is Dr. Rodney Klein, and my research title is The Impact of Social Media on Mental Health Outcomes. Here we have a simple definition of social media. Social media are internet-based channels that allow users to opportunistically interact and selectively self-present in real time or asynchronously with broad and narrow audiences who derive value from user-generated content. Deriving value is important because social media can be used to form and preserve relationships. As can be seen on the right, many people use social media for different purposes. Some people use social media for business promotion or marketing, but most people think it serves the purpose of real-time connection into the lives of others. However, what we see is what others allow us to see. Audience perception can influence how we choose to portray ourselves, which is what we see in composition effect or expectation effects. Composition effect are the changes to the message that occur as a user constructs the message and considers how to communicate it. Expectation self-effects reflect when the user considers what will happen in the future as a result of their message and the future discussion to come. At the beginning of a study done by Pew Research Center, 7% of people aged 18 to 29 were using social media. Today, we see 90% of its users at this age range. My study focused on college students, which was defined as 18 to 29 by Pew Research, so it's only fair to talk about how they're using it and why. 75% of college students experience moderate stress, which is a known precursor for mental health problems and can lead to poor sleep quality and disruptive behaviors. College students also normally feel some social anxiety, the fear of negative evaluations by others in social situations to perform academically, obtain a career, and find a partner to enjoy life with. Worries about doing all of this can lead to an unbalanced social life, which is where some college students will turn to online dating because it can ease some of these worries and make college life easy, since it's a much less threatening form of social interaction due to no physical gating features. Here we have normal and problematic social media usage. Hunt, Marks, Lipson, and Young found that the proper and healthy amount of social media use is 30 minutes per day, and found that people who use this amount or less had increased well-being from their baseline period. This number was found in correlation to the measurement of well-being scales, which included social support, fear of missing out or FOMO, loneliness, anxiety, depression, self-esteem, and autonomy and self-acceptance. Much like my own research, they wanted completely unaltered data and required participants to screenshot background data their phones collect. They used an A/B design where they had a baseline period where participants used social media as they already were, and then during the treatment period, they were asked to use social media 10 minutes per platform per day. By doing this, they saw a significant impact on well-being during the treatment period as compared to their data from the baseline period. When it comes to problematic social media use, it is characterized as an internet addiction, and it shows behavior problems like that of other addictions and displays severe symptoms like tolerance, salience, mood modification, withdrawal, and conflict. However, the withdrawal will show itself as FOMO, the anxiety that you're missing out on something that might be currently happening elsewhere, often on social media. Here we work to define the types of social media users. We have passive and active. Passive users are those that read discussions, read comments and reviews, and watch videos and pictures with no interaction. These are the most common types of users on social media sites. A passive social media user has increased odds of severe depressive symptoms because they digest information with no output. And the gratifications for a passive user include the ability to surveil others and gain knowledge and information about them without having to interact with them. Active users are those that engage in action items, such as liking a picture, favoriting, voting, sharing content, commenting on other content, or posting their own. Gratifications for an active user include social interaction, communication, and self-status seeking behaviors, which can lead to increased emotional support from friends, improve well-being, and increase social capital. The goal of this research is to validate previous research on the topic and add to a lacking group of information, so other research can perform and invalidate the study as well. Research will show that active social media users will score higher for depression, lower for self-esteem and fear of missing out, whereas passive social media users will score higher for anxiety, fear of missing out, and self-esteem. Now we'll talk about participants and measures. The study consisted of 38 college students, 18 to 29 years old, 22 females, 15 males, and one individual that identified as others. Recruitment was done by professors adding a link to the survey on their Blackboard shells and an email sent out by myself to gain participation. All participants were given informed consent at the beginning of the study prior to completing the survey. If someone selected no, they do not agree to participate, they are taken to the very end of the survey and they could exit out of the page. In most studies that were reviewed for my research, there were similar measures and expected outcomes, including measuring the amount of time spent on social media, gathered through screenshots, how time was spent, measured by categorizing active and passive use, and then the various mental health inventories. Common outcomes were depression and anxiety symptomatology. Social media use is quantitatively measured through the participants' screenshots that were provided, but in order to measure what type of user they were, participants were asked questions in regards to how they use social media. The total overall score determined the type of user. The Beck Depression Inventory was used to rate the degree to which participants experienced symptoms in the last week. Beck Anxiety Inventory was a self-report measure where questions were answered on a scale of not at all to severely, it bothered me a lot. Using the Rosenberg self-esteem score, participants were scored as low self-esteem, average self-esteem, or high self-esteem. With fear of missing out, scores are computed by taking an average of the scores. Here we have the total screen time averages for both males and females broken down by category. You can see males had a higher overall screen time usage as compared to females, but females had more total social networking time, but still less social networking time daily. Screenshot data only gave general information as to how much people were using social media as opposed to how they were using it. Social media use score referred to categorizing users as passive or active, and we saw very little difference between males and females in social media use scores, and they both score for active use. Over the next few slides, each of the following graphs reflect there is no significant correlation between any of the various mental health measures and social media use. Here we see the tables for social media use and depression, and social media use and anxiety, the two most common measures used in social media studies. Again, there's no correlation with the scores here for either the self-esteem scale or the FOMO scale. No positive or negative associations were able to be formed. All the data for the adult well-being scale, including depression, anxiety, outward irritability, and inward irritability are here on the slide, and still no correlations are able to be made. The independent sample t-test reflects that there is no difference between males and females in the mean social media use scores. And since there was no difference observed between males and females on this measure, we did not separate by gender when examining the relationship between each measure of mental health and social media use. Males still use more social media when looking at screenshots, though there was a 1-point difference in scoring for social media. This does not mean anything in regards to scoring for type of user. They were both active, as that meant over 18. In conclusion, my study found the opposite of other studies that saw significance between mental health measures and social media use. And some possible explanations for this include the fact that I had a very small amount of participants. In comparison to other studies, I only have 38. There was a big lack of demographic diversity. I had mostly females take the study. I wanted a 50-50 split, but as we can see from the data on the social media use, it didn't make much of a difference in regards to how participants were using social media in relation to gender. And while most other studies included the same amount of measures, if I were to do this again, I would likely only measure the most common outcomes, depression and anxiety, to keep survey fatigue from occurring. At some point, participants may have started answering randomly just to get it over with, which is the opposite of what we wanted. Even though the responses were anonymous, people may still be experiencing conformity bias, unwilling to answer questions truthfully about things that are perceived bad in society or have to do with negative emotions. Thank you for your time and watching my presentation.